Say what you're gonna say. I don't care anyway. You don't know about me.
I think Mr. Vegan, in his own way, especially with the collaboration of his wife and now their child, I think they could actually make a lot of very relevant vegan content in the future. Hopefully they're not feeding the little tater tot just grains and soybeans. Oh my gosh, I swear some of these vegans with the soy diets they're giving their kids, they're going to make their kids transgender.
Despite the fact that homosexuality is observed in over 1,500 different species in the animal kingdom, there is still a debate amongst the Homo sapiens about whether or not homosexuality is natural. People who think that homosexuality isn't natural think of it as a choice or a lifestyle, that the natural preference is for the opposite sex. Others say that it's not a choice, it's an inherent preference for the same sex, that just like straight people don't choose who they're attracted to, neither do gay people. Science has dug its way into this hot debate. Owing to a few popular studies conducted in the past 20 years, the leading thought is that homosexuality is genetic, it's something you inherit. Although pinpointing a specific gene has been very tricky business. Evolutionarily speaking, gay and lesbian folks are less likely to have children, so how then is it possible for a gene to be passed on to 8% of the population? A new study that came out recently claims to have an answer to this question: epigenetics. Epigenetics refers to a change in how a gene is expressed. The expression is changed not by a change in the DNA sequence, but by other mechanisms, in this case, changing exposure to testosterone in the womb. So to understand this, we ought to back up a little bit. In biology class, you learned that an XX chromosome means that the baby will become a female, and an XY chromosome will develop into a male. But why does XY become a male? Well, because genes on the Y chromosome trigger the release of testosterone, which prompts the development of other male characteristics. Now, during this process, the hormone release is regulated by epimarks, or sex-related genes that are turned on and off to keep male or female development on a steady course, even when hormones are spiking and dipping and all kinds of crazy pregnancy things are happening. This regulation process, called epichanges, controls how masculine or feminine a fetus is. Now, normally epichanges are erased after they're activated. They aren't supposed to be passed on from a parent to a child because they're triggered by the environment. But occasionally, they do pass. And when that child has children of their own, the idea is that child could be gay. Kind of confusing, I know, but basically it's about hormone exposure in the womb that affects sexual preferences in offspring a generation down the line. Now, the study is not conclusive, but it is scientifically significant. We're slowly advancing our understanding of homosexuality, a great evolutionary question. It's also socially significant because one of the main arguments used to justify discrimination against LGBT folks is that they're choosing to be gay, that this is a bad choice, so they deserve to be punished with discriminatory policies. But as this research unravels, we're starting to see that sexual orientation may not actually be a lifestyle choice, that it very well could be an immutable characteristic, something that you can't change, just like your race or your sex. And since we now legally acknowledge that racism and sexism are kinda not okay, maybe society at large can extend that attitude to homophobia as well. In that sense, research like this moves us forward toward a more tolerant and peaceful world.
They're going to fuck up their kids' hormones, and their kids are going to end up transgendered eventually. So parents, please look into the evils of soy and get your kids off that feminizing shit.
The evidence does not support this claim.
So, yeah, this is the best a burnout heroin addict can come up with. It's bad, it's really stupid, but you're dumb. And I think once you accept the fact that you're a stupid person, you can finally live a much more rich and fulfilling life. A lot of people worry about the phytoestrogens in things like soy without realizing dairy does contain high amounts of female hormones, which have been shown to raise estrogen levels and reduce testosterone levels. The difference between the estrogen found in cow's milk and the estrogen found in plants like soy or flax is the estrogen found in cow's milk is mammalian estrogen, so it's identical to the estrogen produced by your own body, whereas the estrogen in plants like soy is, of course, phytoestrogen. It does not affect your hormone levels in any way. This recent meta-analysis found no effect of soy or isoflavone supplements to alter bioavailable testosterone concentrations in men, So this claim that soy raises estrogen levels and lowers testosterone levels is just a myth that's based off of very old, flawed data. Also, fiber is a huge component of ridding your body of excess estrogen, as fiber soaks up estrogen in your colon and you literally shit it out. So eating a lower fiber diet filled with meat will surely raise your estrogen levels. So if you're choosing chicken or any meat as a protein source over soy, which actually contains fiber, you'll be raising your estrogen levels through that pathway alone. Chickens also have the highest phthalate concentration of any food, and phthalates are chemicals that are used to make plastics, and they are known as plasticizers as they make plastics more flexible. So what are the effects of these chemicals in the human body? Well, they reduce testosterone levels in men, reduce fertility in men, they decrease thyroid function, they increase risk of obesity and diabetes, and infants with prenatal phthalate exposure have shrunken penises, and phthalate exposure in children has been associated with a reduced IQ.
Phthalates. Phthalates are chemical compounds used in a wide range of consumer products, including pesticides, paints, PVC plastic. However, the contribution of dietary intake to phthalate exposure has not been well defined until now. What's the problem with phthalate exposure? Effects on sexual health and development have been observed in recent human studies. We've known phthalates affect the genital development of lab rats, but for the first time ever, human data has been published. Simple study, they measured the levels of phthalates flowing through the bodies of pregnant women, and then later measured the size and characteristics of their infant son's genitals after birth between ages 2 months to 3 years. There was one phthalate particularly associated with a smaller penis, mono-2-ethyl-hexyl phthalate, MEHP. The researcher concludes these changes in male infants associated with prenatal exposure to some of the same phthalate metabolites that cause similar alterations in male rodents suggest that commonly used phthalates may under-virilize humans as well. So what foods should pregnant women stay away from to decrease their phthalate exposure in hopes of avoiding the phthalate-related syndrome of incomplete virilization? The urine levels of thousands of Americans all across the country were measured along with their diets to find out which food was most significantly correlated with phthalate body burden. They looked at dairy, eggs, fish, fruit, poultry, potatoes, tomatoes, vegetables in general, and red meat. The food associated with the greatest exposure to phthalates was poultry consumption. So for example, in one analysis, while total dairy consumption was significantly associated with one of the phthalate chemicals, it was the eggs and the poultry consumption. In particular, that was a significant predictor of levels of MEHP, as well as total phthalates. This is consistent with what's been found measuring phthalate levels directly in foods. Yes, there's some in other meat products, fish, fats, oils, and milk, but poultry was the worst, suggesting that an increase in 1 ounce of poultry per day is associated with an increase in DHP metabolite levels of approximately 5.7%. A single chicken breast can be 8 ounces. And one of those metabolites is MEHP, the phthalate most closely tied to smaller penis size in infant boys. In fact, that was the most statistically significant finding in the whole study, the correlation between poultry consumption and MEHP. In addition to a smaller penis, MEHP appears to increase the odds of boys later growing breasts 25-fold, and then decrease testosterone later in life. Now, look, just because you have a smaller penis doesn't necessarily mean you're less masculine, as was widely reported, but there was actually a study published last year showing that the phthalates found in chicken were significantly associated with less masculine behavior in boys, such as playing less with trucks and more with dolls, for example. The chicken phthalates have also been associated with increased odds of cesarean section, diminished child intelligence, particularly in boys, attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, ADHD symptoms, later in life with abdominal obesity, altered thyroid function, damaged sperm, and, as we learned this summer, a lower sperm count. Why is chicken so contaminated? Maybe it's just leaching into the meat from the plastic wrap packaging? Probably not. The finding that egg consumption is significantly associated with levels of the penis-shrinking MEHP suggests that chickens themselves may be contaminated, and that food is not being contaminated just through packaging and processing. Maybe it's in the feed? Phthalates have been intentionally fed to chickens in hopes of decreasing the cholesterol levels in their muscles and eggs, but it didn't work. Regardless, if there's one thing pregnant women may want to avoid during pregnancy to protect their son's normal development, it would be to avoid poultry.
In our last interview, we discussed soy with regards to women and breast cancer. But I want to talk this time about men, manly men, about man boobs, or in scientific terms, gynecomastia. Does soy have a feminizing effect on men and lower libido? Well, I mean, if it were true, I'd have double Ds by now and be avoiding my wife, but the opposite is the case. I mean, clear things up for the men out there.
So, there are two case reports in the medical literature of feminizing effects of soy consumption. They were at massive amounts of soy. Here, I was just looking at those. I'm doing a series of videos on soy, and so it's probably the best review is in a journal called Fertility and Sterility. The title is Soybean Exposure Does Not Have Feminizing Effects on Men. But that's in general. But look, you can't overdo it. There's two papers trying to look at the quantity here. In fact, in this volume, I have some videos coming up on the phytoestrogens in beer. Actually, the hops have very powerful phytoestrogens, more so than soy, because I just want to get a sense of how much. There we go. How much soy these men were eating. Yeah, two case reports, feminizing effects, 14 to 20 servings of soy a day, soy foods a day. So 14 to 20 servings of soy food a day is not a good idea, but at reasonable doses, even higher than the 1 to 2 servings a day you see in populations like Japanese, they do not have feminizing effects. So let me see, 20 servings. So that's like if you ate 5 liters, so over a gallon of soy milk a day, for example, wow. That could have feminizing effects. So it's the dose that makes the poison, but at typical doses, no feminizing effects, and actually beneficial effects like reducing risk of prostate cancer, etc.
I do a lot of training and fitness, and a lot of my videos are fitness-based, and I get a lot of comments on, mostly from men, in fear, because my diet's pretty heavy on soy. I love edamame and tofu and tempeh. I use those things regularly, and they've been very essential and helpful in my athletic endeavors. And a lot of men are fearful of that due to their thoughts of feminizing effects.
If they're really concerned about phytoestrogens, they should watch my video on beer. So hops actually has a more powerful phytoestrogen than soy. So beer is actually more estrogenic. But, you don't see guys saying, oh, my God, don't drink beer. You'll get feminizing.
Right. And dairy as well.
So we know 7 to 18 servings of soy a day may neutralize some of the beneficial effects of avoiding animal protein. At the same time, studies have repeatedly found that women who eat lots of soy appear to have a lower risk of getting breast cancer and a better chance of surviving breast cancer than those who don't eat soy. So is there some magic number of soy food servings we should shoot for? So far, we know that somewhere between 7 and 18 may not be so good, so more than 18 definitely gets the axe. This 2-year study found no effect on IGF levels of adding 2 servings of soy food daily, whether they were tofu, soy milk, soy nuts, or the concentrated soy isolate found in plant-based meats, protein bars, or protein powder. Still fine. Still got a big range here. This study suggested 5 to 10 servings a day was bad, increased IGF. So we're kind of slowly but surely narrowing down the kind of safety window. Same year in Japan, 3 servings a day cleared the IGF radar. And then that's it. That's all the science we have so far. So the bottom line is legumes should be part of everyone's daily diet, which means lentils, peas, and/or beans, ideally with each of our meals, of which soy is an excellent choice, but I recommend that we should probably stick to no more than 3 to 5 servings a day. When the Women's Health Initiative study found that menopausal women taking hormone replacement therapy suffered higher rates of breast cancer, cardiovascular disease, and overall harm, a call was made for safer alternatives. Yes, estrogen has positive effects, the Women's Health Initiative found, such as reducing menopausal symptoms and improving bone health, reducing hip fracture risk, but also negative effects, increasing the risk of blood clots in the heart, brain, and lungs, as well as breast cancer. So ideally, to get the best of both worlds, we need what's called a selective estrogen receptor modulator, something that has pro-estrogenic effects in some tissues, like bone, but anti-estrogenic effects in other tissues, like the breast. Drug companies are trying to make them, but phytoestrogens, natural compounds in plants like genistein and soybeans that are structurally similar to estrogen, appear to function as natural selective estrogen receptor modulators. How could something that looks like estrogen act as an anti-estrogen? The original theory for how soy phytoestrogens control breast cancer growth is that they compete with our own estrogens for binding to the estrogen receptor. As you drip more and more soy compounds on breast cancer cells in a petri dish, less and less actual estrogen is able to bind to them. So the estrogen-blocking ability of phytoestrogens can help explain their anti-estrogenic effects. But how do we then explain their pro-estrogenic effects on other tissues like bone? How can soy have it both ways? The mystery was solved when we discovered there are 2 types of estrogen receptors in the body, and so how a target cell responds depends on which type of estrogen receptors they have. This may be the key to understanding the health protective potential of soy phytoestrogens, the existence of this newly discovered estrogen receptor called estrogen receptor beta, to distinguish it from the classic estrogen receptor alpha. And unlike our body's own estrogen, soy phytoestrogens preferentially bind to the beta receptors. If you have people eat about a cup of cooked whole soybeans, within about 8 hours, genistein levels in the blood reach about 20 to 50 nanomoles. That's how much is circulating throughout our body, bathing our cells. About half is bound up to proteins in the blood, so the effective concentration is about half that. So let's see what that means for estrogen receptor activation. This is the graph that explains the mysterious health benefits of soy foods. Down around the effective levels you'd get eating a cup of soybeans, there's very little alpha activation, but lots of beta activation. So now let's look at where each of these receptors are located in the human body. The way estrogen pills increase the risk of fatal blood clots is by causing the liver to dump out all these extra clotting factors. But guess what? The human liver only contains alpha estrogen receptors, not beta receptors, and so maybe if we ate like 30 cups of soybeans a day, that could be a problem. But at the kinds of concentrations one would get with just normal soy consumption, no wonder this is a problem with drug estrogens, but not soy phytoestrogens. The effects on the uterus appear also to be mediated solely by alpha receptors, which is presumably why no negative impact has been seen with soy. So while estrogen-containing drugs may increase the risk of endometrial cancer up to tenfold, phytoestrogen-containing foods are associated with significantly less endometrial cancer. In fact, protective effects for these types of gynecological cancers in general. Women who ate the most soy had 30% less endometrial cancer and appeared to cut their ovarian cancer risk nearly in half. Soy phytoestrogens don't appear to have any effect on the lining of the uterus, but still can dramatically improve menopausal symptoms. The Kupperman Index is like a compilation of all 11 of the most common menopausal symptoms. In terms of bone health, human bone cells carry beta estrogen receptors, so we might expect soy phytoestrogens to be protective, and indeed they do seem to significantly increase bone mineral density, consistent with population data suggesting high consumption of soy products is associated with increased bone mass. But can they prevent bone loss over time? Soy milk was compared to a transdermal progesterone cream. The control group lost significant bone mineral density in their spine over the 2-year study period, but the progesterone group lost significantly less, and the 2 glasses of soy milk a day group ended up actually better than when they started. This is probably the most robust study to date, comparing the soy phytoestrogen genistein to a more traditional hormone replacement drug regimen. In the spine, over a year, the placebo group lost bone density, but gained in the phytoestrogen and estrogen groups, and the same with the hip bones. The study clearly shows that the soy phytoestrogen prevents bone loss and enhances new bone formation, in turn producing a net gain of bone mass. But the only reason we care about bone mass is we want to prevent fractures. Is soy food consumption associated with lower fracture risk? Yes. A significantly lower risk of bone fracture associated with just a single serving of soy a day, the equivalent of 5 to 7 grams of soy protein, or 20 to 30 milligrams of phytoestrogens. So that's just like 1 cup of soy milk, or even better, a serving of a whole soy food like tempeh, or edamame, or the beans themselves. We don't have fracture data on soy supplements, though, so if we seek the types of health benefits we presume Asian populations get from eating whole and traditional soy foods, maybe we should look to eating those rather than taking unproven protein powders or pills. Is there anyone who should avoid soy? Well, some people have soy allergies, but a national survey found that only about 1 in 2,000 people report a soy allergy. That's 40 times less than the most common allergen, dairy milk, and about 10 times less than all the other common allergens like fish, eggs, shellfish, nuts, wheat, or peanuts. What about soybeans, though? The phytoestrogens in soy protect against cancer, both men and women, but might they decrease male fertility? Fox News thinks so, and they're fair and balanced. Fact or fiction? Fiction, and it's interesting why. The study did find that soy decreased sperm concentration, but did not significantly affect the sperm count itself. How can you have the same number of sperm, but a lower concentration? Because of a larger ejaculate volume. Soy appears to stimulate the prostate gland to produce a larger load of ejaculate fluid, but the actual number of sperm remains the same.
MTV, take this shit down. This video is a bad look for your channel. You were doing good, bro. You were fucking making vlogs. You were talking about your life. You were fucking, you've resorted to this?